Okay, so today what I want to do is I want to look at the distance drivers that are all fall around the 11-12 speed category and find out how they fly, well not all of them, but some. Find out how they fly at about 350, 400, and then 420/450 into a headwind and then with a tailwind. And so we're going to look at the VIP West Side Sword. And I've always liked the way they've looked and felt. I've just liked VIP plastic. Then there's the new Discmania DD1, the Horizon plastic, feels really good. I've liked it. But then we're going to look at the Royal Grace. I'm not going to do the Orbit because I know the Orbit is going to be a bit more stable. And then we're going to look at the Discmania Enigma. And this is a Neo Enigma, but kind of a special run. I think I heard that they're European runs. And then we're going to look at the Enigma Star Wraith. So let's see. All right, I just got back home from the field and throwing them, and starting off at the 350-foot range, what you're going to notice with the sword is it's immediately one of the most understable out of all of them. Even at 350, without enough hyzer, it just wants to flip up and turn out, and it won't come back. We go into the DD1, threw it a little bit high, a little lower, probably would have pushed another maybe 370, but it was like effortless flight. To throw the DD1, let it flip up, and this is into a headwind a little bit, and turns out and then just lands nice and flat right there. We get into the Grace. I think the Grace would have had a bit more stability than the DD1, but I released it on a bit of just a flat, almost anhyzer angle, and with that wind it pushed it over. But you notice it doesn't just turn over like the sword did, it comes back out of it. And then we get into this separate class of the Enigma and Star Wraith where throw them on maybe a little hyzer, even flat, and they both just fly straight, slight turn if any, but really strong fade at about 350. And then we got into the part of pushing about 400 with a tailwind. Now this was interesting because the sword with a tailwind, I expected it to stable it up a little more, and it didn't, even with a bit of a hyzer. The DD1, this was a phenomenal example of how I think they fly so well. Just effortless glide, nice little flip up. Again, lower, and these would be even better. So slower arm speeds, I think could still get a good rip on it. The Grace, stabled up even more with that tailwind. You see it, I threw it flat, maybe slight hyzer out to the right, and it just wouldn't flip over, turn over at all, and just finish straight. And then the Enigma and Wraith, again, I'm starting to see that they're a different category of stability than these other three. But flat, little turn, if any, but you're able to put as much on them as you want and as I want, and they're not going to just turn and come out. So then we went to the hyzer at about 400 feet into a headwind, and this is where I threw the sword a bit high, but even then, had it been a little lower, it probably would have just turned over into the ground. You see it on steep hyzer, just flip up and way up high, have a huge turnout, and then fade straight down to the ground. The DD1, this was an example of why I think and know this would be a great tight wooded disc, because even with the headwind, it was a low hyzer, and then the Grace into the headwind. Even with its more stability, it still had quite a bit of turnout, but it has the strong enough fade to come out of it, unless I probably put it on an anhyzer and it wouldn't come back. And again, Enigma and Wraith, same story we're probably going to see throughout this video, is that even into the headwind, there's just a slight turn and still a strong fade at the end for both. I threw the Wraith a bit flatter because I immediately started noticing it was more stable. And then we got into the anhyzer shot, and this was with a tailwind, and even the sword with a tailwind behind it, it wasn't going to come out of a steep or even a less steep angle. And then we did the Grace, and the Grace was a phenomenal shot because the angle was right, the height was right, and the stability of the disc all combined together gave it enough to really swing out around and then still finish flat and slide. But then we go to the DD1. After I threw it at that angle, it didn't fight into the ground for a cut roll. It still tried to fight out for a flatter finish. And then we get into the two more stable ones, the Enigma. That one I didn't throw it out wide enough or high enough and a steep angle, but even then you'll see it doesn't fight into a cut roll, and the Wraith, of course, being the most stable of them all that I'm starting to see. Right angle, right height, swung around, and still finished with a fade at the end. And then we start to get into these final two shots. The one with a headwind just ripping into it, about 420, 450 was the goal. The sword could not handle it whatsoever. Even on steep hyzer, you'll see it just flip up, turn over, and turn into a roller. And then we got into the DD1. That one again would have been a way better shot had I not thrown it 800, like 100 feet into the air, because it flipped up, had quite a bit of turn, and then still finished. And then the Grace, that one was also felt really good throwing into the wind. You just have to give it enough height off the ground and enough room in your adjustments to give it that time to turn out and then fade back into its finish. And of course, Enigma and Wraith, ripped into them as hard as I wanted to, maybe even put a little hyzer on one, and neither of them had any kind of issue wanting to turn over, even with this about 8 to 10 mile an hour headwind. So that was really reliable and good to know and be able to see. And then the final shot was about a 435 foot tailwind shot, and I expected, because of the understability, for the sword to at least still flip up and have some turn, but with that steep hyzer angle and the tailwind, it actually didn't turn out at all. The DD1 was phenomenal. That one, again, a little lower, would have pushed another 20 feet, but still had great flight, just flipped up, turned out, and finished at about 420, I think. The Grace, that one, this was a bit unfair, at least on the distance category, because I put it on a bit of an anhyzer angle, so it finished, and it just carried and swung out on that anhyzer angle all the way to its finish, which is a testament to its stability. And then we go into these final two with the tailwind. I felt no reservation putting as much into them as I could. Could have had better angle and like height control, but even then they both made their distance about 430. No turn, just slightly with the Enigma, and then into a really strong finish, and the Wraith almost no turn in almost any of these shots. And so that's how all those went. And so my overall thoughts are that I think arms that can throw about 320 to about 380, and that's your max distance. A sword may be a good disc for you. And then if you maybe can push about 400, I think the DD1 is a phenomenal max distance driver for you, even into a headwind. But even for those throwing over 400, it's probably just a really good, controlled, even low, flat, tight, wooded course type of disc. The Grace, I think, moves out of this category of kind of tight disc golf kind of disc, unless you're wanting a strong finish, because you'll notice that almost every shot where it wasn't fighting out of an anhyzer angle, it had a strong skip fade finish, and I think I'd want to use that more for an open fairway type situation, but was more overstable than the DD1. And so if you find the Grace being a bit understable for you, then this for me was a really good option. I think it has exceptionally more glide than the Wraith does. It carries a bit further, and it's been my max distance driver out of all the ones I have. And then the Wraith is just a really good, like, you're going to be into a headwind kind of disc or tailwind. If you're just throwing over 420, I think this can handle quite a bit. I don't know about a 500 foot, but that's not me. I can't throw that, so I don't know. And so those are my thoughts. If you guys know of any other 11, 12 speed discs you think are worth a comparison video with any of these, let me know, and I'll do my best to grab hold of them and get one made.